He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
This is Mediawatch. I'm Colin Peacock. Now, people expect mainstream media outlets to have some standards when it comes to offensive language, especially when the audience might not be expecting it. Indeed, there are standards for this that are overseen by the media watchdogs to which the public can complain. So this week we look at how they ruled on two really rude words recently that certainly did take some people by surprise. But the focus this week is on RNZ National and its boss. For years, the network has been losing live listeners while its biggest rival in talk radio has surged ahead of it. And now RNZ's putting in place a new plan to stop the slide after a pretty rugged review from a former news chief who criticised RNZ's capability and also its culture.
13,700. 5. That is the net gain of migrants for the whole country for June, 13,700. If it hits zero, I think we'll need to tell everyone where the light switch is, won't we?
That was Mike Hosking on his Mike Hosking breakfast show on News Talk ZB late last week with his rapid-fire end-of-the-week feature, Mark the Week, in which he rates news stories out of 10 in a pretty random way. And after those immigration stats, Mike Hosking gave high marks to his own network's latest audience stats and a low blow at rival RNZ National's recent performance.
Radio ratings, 8. Good day at the old ZB as yet again yesterday. I hope you're listening, Radio New Zealand. Good morning, Radio New Zealand. As yet again we managed to find more people to lap this up. We, as always, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And that is the week.
ZB was again the country's #1 commercial station, according to the GfK survey results last week, ahead of music stations like The Breeze, The Rock and More FM. But ZB's cumulative audience was actually about 20,000 down on the 647 that were recorded in the last survey in May, though Mike Hosking didn't mention that on his show.
It seems to be a success story.
We seem to be mopping up some listeners in Wellington for some reason.
No, I don't believe that. I probably shouldn't say that, but we went up. Wellington, good morning. There's 800,000 of you suddenly listening.
I'm just trying to think, what station are they not listening to?
Yeah, there could be a desertion from one station and moving to another. That you might be onto something there, Glenn. There could be a fleeing from boredom in the capital. Could be that. No names mentioned.
Well, as we heard, Mike Hosking had already mentioned RNZ pretty clearly. But when the GfK audience numbers came through for RNZ this week, there was some better news. For the first time in 3 years, RNZ National's weekly audience was up by about 8,000 to almost 476,000. And RNZ Concerts audience jumped by even more, taking the combined RNZ radio audience to 575,500. And Morning Report's audience was up a little as well to 338,000 a week, while the Mike Hosking breakfast was down by 6,000. Now, much of that RNZ gain was in Wellington, though Mike Hosking didn't mention that on Mark the Week this week. On Wednesday, RNZ trumpeted its ratings bump as a springboard for RNZ's plans for audio, its new strategy to reverse the drift from RNZ National. However, RNZ is still a long way back on the numbers they were getting 5 years ago, when well over 600,000 people were listening to RNZ National on its own. And this time round, the audience slipped the gain in the Auckland region. Now, a key part of the new RNZ plan is a greater focus on Auckland to reflect the importance of the region and its population. RNZ's also said radio now has to no longer be all things to all people, and it's targeting 50 to 69-year-olds. And there will also be more training for on-air staff to lift standards, and all this will be overseen by a new executive, a chief audio officer. Now, one of the reasons they're doing all this was a stinging review of RNZ by its former head of news, Richard Sutherland, who left that role just 2 years ago. And he has urged his former peers to focus almost exclusively on RNZ National for a year to get it back on track, as well as having a wholesale shift in the culture at RNZ and a shift in what he called RNZ's centre of gravity.
While the capital remains politically important, the views and preferences of its residents are the tail wagging the RNZ National dog.
And the dog is, obviously, Auckland. On the Herald Now show the day after the Sutherland report was made public, the Herald's media insider Shane Curry reacted to that like this.
RNZ kind of batted that away a little bit. They're saying for various reasons they still want people in both centres. It's important, I guess, if there's a major emergency in Auckland, that they do have people elsewhere in the country. But to me, it makes sense that your flagship show would be in the biggest city.
It's always sounded like a bit of a yarn to me, that what if there's an earthquake? The only place there's probably likely to be an earthquake is Wellington.
True.
You know?
Well, the people of Christchurch and Canterbury would respectfully disagree with that, but even if they were only really weighing up Auckland and Wellington, a volcanic eruption could take out Auckland-based operations just as easily, and the Civil Defence and Emergency Management legislation, which designates RNZ as a lifeline utility, does demand that RNZ keeps going in an emergency no matter what or where. Now that, along with a charter that's also enshrined in law, is one of the things that makes RNZ different from the commercial broadcasters, which can target the biggest markets and the biggest financial rewards. But RNZ's insufficient appeal and presence in Auckland was just one of the problems that Richard Sutherland's report cited in terms that were described elsewhere as scathing. He also said some people shouldn't be on the air, and he said a new front-rank host was needed straight away. And at the Herald, Shane Curry's view of all that was this.
The report is very surprising in the language that it used. I think it's a lot more ferocious and fierce than many people were expecting. That was certainly the feedback that I got. But Richard Sutherland did not hold back in terms of the cultural issues.
Not all of Richard Sutherland's urgings, though, have been accepted for action by RNZ, and in a minute we'll ask RNZ's Editor-in-Chief and Chief Executive Paul Thompson, who commissioned the review, about that. But in its statement this week, RNZ also said that recent updates to Morning Report are the first signs of change flowing through to the audience, with more to come. Now, these include behind-the-scenes things like more production of the show in Auckland and not Wellington in the future, and on air they already have weekly head-to-head chats with opposing MPs, a weekly chat with a business leader, and a weekly sports panel. All features, incidentally, of the top-rating Mike Hosking breakfast on News Talk ZB. And the RNZ listeners have also noticed this change in tone, with more chit-chat between the presenters, and that seems to be something that many of those who've written to Mediawatch really don't like. One example last week was when Alice Wilkins in the UK shared a yarn about a dispute in the UK over chatty office workers.
But I guess what if you're a personality hire? Perhaps the bosses like some personality in the office, making it a fun workplace.
Having worked in the office with you, no, I'm going to leave it there, Alice. I'm going to leave it there.
But Ingrid Hipkiss didn't leave it there. There was plenty more chat about chattiness.
But more coming in on chatty co-workers as well. Angela says if you're in a job which requires real focus, people talking loudly and laughing is very distracting. More to come after the news, which is next.
And it's not just on Morning Report where the presenters have clearly been encouraged to be more engaging with the audience and each other.
Just to top everything off, Jeffrey, Brussels sprouts, yes or no?
Yes, indeed. They're in my fridge and I might have them with a steak and a little bit of chopped up bacon tonight.
Well, that is the thing, isn't it, Jeffrey? Nobody says Brussels sprouts on their own, yum yum. Everyone talks about slathering them with butter and chucking in some bacon.
Lisa Owen there talking to business reporter Geoffrey Halley on Checkpoint last Monday. But as one listener pointed out to us, no one was really talking about Brussels sprouts, except for them. Sounded like BS to me, said another listener, not talking about Brussels sprouts. Though one thing is, people are interested in food. That bit of banter followed Lisa Owen talking to a grower in the Raitahi taking veggies for sale on the road in a mobile vegetable truck to keep the cost of living down. A really good, real story. And a few days earlier, Checkpoint had featured a video report about a new scheme aiming to bypass supermarkets for fresh veggies and get seasonal stuff grown locally to local homes. And just days before that, another food and cost of living video went viral. Katie Gossett's short vertical from her RNZ podcast Thrift told the tale of the low-cost community kitchen in a bowling club in Dunedin, and that's been viewed more than 400,000 times on Facebook alone.
$5 if you don't.
It's quiet now, but on average, the bowling club feeds around 700 people a day. To make the food affordable, they buy bulk seasonal produce and prepare just 1 or 2 recipes each day.
It's because that's the only way we can make both.
Well, that's the kind of digital age engagement RNZ really values these days, but RNZ's strategy of sharing content with other local media is also paying off in terms of widening the audience for its stuff. However, that trend of declines in live listeners to radio in recent years is the one that's now putting RNZ under pressure.
I think Paul Thompson, the CEO, basically has 6 to 12 months to sort this out, to get the. And, I think there are jobs on the line here, both at board and executive level.
The Herald's Shane Curry there on Herald Now last week, claiming that jobs are on the line with their new RNZ audio plan, including the top job, that of Chief Executive and Editor-in-Chief Paul Thompson. So, Paul, why do you think it is that RNZ National's audience has, fallen persistently since 2019, 2020? And what is it that RNZ's been doing about that up till now that hasn't really worked?
Well, the audience picture for us is really positive overall. We reach more people than ever with our charter. But within that, RNZ National has been falling, as you've said. We peaked during COVID. And I think we've lost engagement with a portion of that live listening audience since that time. It was good to see.
Sorry, what does that mean? You've lost engagement. What does that mean? You've been doing things that turn them off.
Yeah, it's the challenge we always have to adapt to changing audience preferences. Audiences are always shifting and wanting new things. COVID, we hit a peak with our live listening and it has been tracking down. So there's a group of people who used to listen to us who have just not found us useful or relevant.
You mentioned COVID, and of course in a lot of the news is hard to hear. It's confronting stuff. We know news avoidance is a thing. Other surveys have picked that up. Can you not tell your critics, look, we're doing the job of telling people what they need to know. Times are hard. News is hard. We're going to lose audience.
Our key job is to deliver our charter as best we can, and ratings and audience size is never our primary motivation. We do know that news fatigue is a real turn-off for some people. We know that from other people's research, and our own research talks about that. But RNZ can't stop covering the news. But I don't think we get a free pass, Colin, in terms of being able to say, we've done our job and told people what they want, what they need to hear, but it's not what they want to hear, and then give up. And there are ways to make sure that our strong journalism and current affairs is engaging and relevant and useful. Going back to everything that RNZ does, we do so much for New Zealand now. We do it across different platforms, different forms of storytelling. We broaden and diversified audiences in our content. We're now getting to 80% of people a month. It's really strong. So within that, though, radio hasn't performed as well as those other platforms, and we have to pay some attention to it.
Yeah, you've had this success in digital growth, a lot of people online. As the critics say, you've privileged the digital growth and neglected live radio?
It was absolutely necessary that we became relevant online. Audiences have moved to digital and social platforms. We have to do a job to deliver our charter for all New Zealanders. That's both new audiences and our traditional audiences. So I do not agree with that criticism. I mean, it would have been very tempting and easy, and perhaps an easier road, just to have stuck to our knitting. But that was never the right thing to do in my view.
Why are you only getting a chief audio officer now? If you've had 5, maybe more years of declining audience for your primary audio channel on RNZ National, should have happened before now?
Look, you can always reflect back and think, maybe we should have done something sooner. It's not that we haven't been paying attention to radio and audio. Just look at the growth of our podcasting as a real strength of RNZ. We've continued to make changes to RNZ National and RNZ Cons. It's not that we haven't been doing it, and we've had people responsible for that. It's now the right time to focus on audio. But I would point out that it's not just about broadcast audio. We see a big opportunity to do a better job for audiences all across digital audio and podcasting and broadcast. So that feels like the right thing to do now, and it's a good step forward.
Yes, but you are now saying we're going to target the over 50s. You're pretty much...
For one station. And
for RNZ National, that's correct. But with this audio plan, giving up on younger listeners, I mean, that's quite something to do for a public outfit, just to say, you're not going to age into this anymore, and the available audience, those were the terms used in the audio plan, is 50 plus, and more specifically 50 to 69. That's pretty narrow. And 5 years ago, you had a bold plan to bring in a youth network to really attract new audiences to radio, even prepared to move RNZ Concert. This is a complete reversal of that 5 years on.
No, it's not. We now have a whole range of services to deliver our content to audiences. Which is quite different than, say, 10 years ago, where RNZ National needed to deliver all of our charter to everyone. And it did, to an extent, needed to be something there that would appeal to everyone. We can now get to younger audiences much more efficiently and effectively through our YouTube channel, 200,000 plus subscribers there. RNZ National is a talk radio station primarily. The talk market is 50 plus. We need to do a better job for those people who like listening to the radio and do a more focused job. But there'll be people listening to our content on air who are from every age group, but it's about where the primary target is and making sure we tailor it. And that's a key change for us. But we're in a good position because we can deliver to some of those other audiences through those other means. And if you just look at the commission content that we have released recently, it includes My Favourite Dead Person and Bird's Eye View, two very specialist pieces of content for younger listeners and younger audiences, and that'll go right across our portfolio. So we are more than one radio station, and we have to be keeping in mind that audiences will come to us how they want to come to us and do the best job we can across that portfolio.
Well, 5 years ago, that youth plan, the board at that time did back it. It fell over for various reasons, but are they now in favour, is the board backing what you're proposing to do, the new audio plan?
Yeah, 100%, and I've worked closely with them. And the audio plan is just one of the things we're doing.
And this chief audio officer, this new role, are they going to have a pretty broad mandate to make big changes?
Yeah, the key thing here is bringing that audio capability right into the exec reporting to me with a very clear brief to make sure that we excel in audio.
Who's going to do that job? Do you have someone in mind already?
The job has been advertised and we've had a good field of candidates and we're recruiting the best person. That's still underway.
But it's a very key role. Is there no one you have in mind already within the industry that you would have targeted for that
because
role?
I think we have to throw it open and have a real contest and keep an open mind.
Well, if I turn to what's now been called the Sutherland Report, he was the head of news up till a couple of years ago, so he experienced, I guess, that drift of audiences from RNZ National. Why him, and why just him? Why not another view as well? Because RNZ National even is more than just news. Why did you only want one view?
Richard has the broadcast and radio experience and the knowledge of us to be able to do that, to provide that advice. I knew he would be frank. He was the right choice to do that work. You don't want to commission advice and get people to tell you what they think you want to hear. But it is his advice, Colin. It's not our audio plan, his recommendations and his view. And what we do at RNZ with our audio plan is up to us. It's up to everyone here.
It's been reported as, that he took a bigger swing at RNZ than people expected, that it might have shocked a few people, including you. You would have expected pretty much what he gave you. I mean, he only left here a couple of years ago. You would have done a big exit interview with him, less than 2 years ago. Some of those things, I'm guessing, that were in the report would have been things he'd actually said to you or to others before he even left. So you would have got what you expected in that report.
It was what I expected, and it wasn't my view. But the thing about independent advice is that it is advice. It's not our plan. And there are some ideas in that which are really strong and some stuff we've got underway. Other things we're not thinking about at the moment, but it is there to stimulate our thinking.
Well, the term was actionable high-level blueprint was what you asked him to provide. So you wanted a document you could actually present and as a strategy and actually enact, right? You didn't just
I wanted to make sure that it had a structure which was useful and could be applied and was practical. But it's our audio plan is our audio plan. Richard was in our offices working and talking to people on this process, and it was always going to have to be shared. Advice is only useful if you share it with people. It's challenging, but it needs to be.
Do you agree with him, though, when he says, look, you've got to have a real firm focus on this for about a year, on RNZ National, turning it around, starting straight away?
It needs to be one area of focus for us, but we are a broad organisation now doing multiple forms of content and getting to more people than ever before. So yes, we'll be focusing on this and it's important, but the work doesn't stop in terms of adapting and responding to audiences on all platforms. This is one of the things we're focusing on, but not the only one.
One of the things he said in that report that probably annoyed staff more than anything else was that he said there was a widespread belief that there was radio listening was somehow, I think the word he used was sunset practice, like somehow the staff had convinced themselves they were managing decline. Do you agree with him?
Radio reach is very slowly falling, but it is falling. That's just a reality of the market. Audio overall is still growing. The audiences who engage with us on radio expect a lot from us, and they really matter to us, and we need to do a good job for them. Whilst radio overall is slowly falling, it is still part of our DNA, and it's a vital thing that we need to do.
Yeah, but he's saying there's a kind of fatalism within RNZ about this. I mean, if it's just true, live radio listening is falling across the board, and that is just a fact. And he's interpreted it as a kind of fatalism. I mean, that really does hurt the people who work here that think they really do care, even if it's difficult in terms of live listening. Do you agree with him that attitude exists and is prevalent within RNZ staff?
Well, his focus was talking to people who are closely involved in our radio output. It's no surprise that they were asking those questions and expressing that view, or at least some of them were. If there is that view, I've certainly challenged it and made it clear that it is important.
He's also said RNZ needs a marquee host urgently, an external hire from outside. He even says, I think of the appendix, the back end of the report, under easy wins for fast, actionable, visible action, change presenters at Morning Report.
That's his view and his opinion, and it's not my view. Our focus is on making sure we give our very strong stable of presenters the best opportunity to flourish. That's the focus. Just to mention Morning Report, we have introduced some changes in terms of the tone and the range of content and the engagement of the host, which is going really well.
Now, he says some people shouldn't be on the air at RNZ. He said that very bluntly in the report. What's the problem, do you think, that he's identifying, that some of the presenters aren't good enough, or is it the reporters who go on air that are sort of below standard? Because you have said, as part of this plan, new training will begin for staff, on-air training immediately. So what do you see as the problem there?
We've got amazing on-air talent at RNZ. You hear it every day. And I think Richard's challenge was to make sure that everyone is equipped to do a great job for the available audience, and making sure that it's consistently strong.
So where are they not good enough now that this training needs to happen?
I think it's about a focus in terms of giving them the skills and the confidence to really shine on air. And it's not about blocking anyone from being part of that. It's making sure that we prepare people so they can do a really good job. The station needs to keep improving. Like everything we do, it needs to keep improving, and we're up for that challenge.
Do you also agree with Richard where he says there's too much of, I think his words were, creating content for themselves, that sometimes RNZ programming reflects internal things and not audience priorities? He didn't give examples. It would help to know what he's talking about.
That's his view. Yeah. I don't share that view, but I think it's good to have our thinking challenged.
You mentioned Morning Report, that some changes had already been made. Interviews with business leaders, sports panel, head-to-heads with MPs, things like that. But also, we're told slightly fewer interviews, not chasing around for so many, quality over quantity. Are these things that you could expect to flow through to other news programs? Is that a sort of new approach that you want to see?
Every program will need its own plan, because every program is obviously at a different time of day where audience needs are different. But what is, I think, really helpful is that we're really thinking about the audience and making sure the content is as useful and as interesting and relatable as it can be.
Yeah, relatable is a kind of two-edged sword, isn't it? Because it's pretty clear presenters have been told to be a bit more engaging, and the style of that is changing. And the feedback that I get, and I know some of it is even copied into you as well, some listeners really don't like what they call the chit-chat. They think it's a bit trivial, this lightness of tone, that it kind of wastes time that could be spent on news or more serious things. This is a danger, isn't it? In trying to be engaging and light, that some people do think that RNZ people are, laughing at their own jokes or amusing themselves. And this change of tone to lightness is something that risks annoying the existing listeners that you really want to hold on to now.
Look, radio is an intimate medium, and people expect us to be human beings on air. But our presenters are authoritative. They're very skilled broadcasters. And we will always have substantial interviews and substantial programming. I use the word relatable. That's about being ourselves on air and having the freedom to do it. But it's mainly about being relevant and useful to audiences. And that human connection is a vital part of RNZ and RNZ National. That's always been a strength. And just making sure we continue to make that strength on an ongoing basis is a really good idea.
But are you getting that feedback from people that say, like Gavin Ellis, for example, former editor of the Herald, media commentator of long-standing, serious person, says, I can't listen to Morning Report, there's too much chit-chat. If I like that style, I watch the TVNZ Breakfast News where they do heaps of it. there is a downside to this, isn't there? If some people don't like it.
There's always a downside, and you'll always get individual feedback. And we're very focused on reliable data and making sure that we are doing things that are useful for audiences overall. There'll always be people who like this thing or don't like this thing. We have to be mindful of that, but also, we shouldn't be holding ourselves back for doing the best we can for audiences overall, and we'll see how we go.
The other thing people are anxious about when they get in touch with us, or interested in, put it that way, this focus on Auckland. How do you think that really changes both the makeup of RNZ and the actual output? Because do we really know what appeals to Auckland region? Because for as long as I can remember, this has been an anxiety at RNZ that doesn't appear to appeal to people in Auckland in the same numbers that it does in other centres.
Well, the first point is that we're New Zealand's public media organisation and we need a nationwide presence. So I can reassure people that this is not about becoming Auckland-centric. But Auckland is a really important and vital and growing market, and we do need to do better there while keeping that overall national coverage. It doesn't mean that every story will be about Auckland, but it's making sure that as part of our programming and part of our editorial decision-making, we do understand what the issues are for that large community. And we can't thrive as New Zealand's public media organisation without thriving in Auckland.
So how do we even know what it is that an Auckland audience wants that's different to the rest of the country?
By having editors and presenters and journalists working who are Aucklanders, as well as the strong team we have who are Wellingtonians, strong team in Christchurch. RNZ has traditionally been very, very strong in Wellington. We have moved resourcing to Auckland and to a lesser degree to Christchurch, but still grown in Christchurch because we want that. We want to make sure that we're reflecting all the communities of New Zealand.
You've got this target now of getting up to 500,000 listeners for RNZ National by November next year. Beyond that, you want to go up another notch to, I think, 520,000. These are the targets. So let's say in November 2027, what do you think RNZ National is going to sound and be like?
It will reflect New Zealand. It'll feel and sound even more than it does at the moment, that it's resonating with all of the major issues and all of the major topics. It'll be delivering our charter very powerfully, not only informing, but also enlightening and educating, which is in our charter. I think the other thing you'll see is that all the fantastic, talented people who work at RNZ will be shining on air. The station will be really useful and relevant.
Do you think it's going to fundamentally be the same sort of output? Like you'll have a morning report from 6 till 9?
I think there'll be a lot of...
a checkpoint in the afternoon and the same sort of things, Sunday morning, Saturday morning?
There'll be lots of elements that are familiar, and there will be a lot of continuity because the station still has a large and very engaged audience. So it will continue to adapt to those audience preferences, but it will be very recognisable when we're going to make sure we bring all those listeners through. It's more for us about being more useful and relevant to as many New Zealanders, both those people who've always relied on us and are very demanding of what we do for them, but also younger audiences, new audiences, and maybe connecting with people who didn't know us too much before. And that's why that overall audience picture is so important.
Okay, well, the environment that you've got to do all this in is a kind of constrained one. You've got a cut of the budget to 7% this year. How is that going to affect the services and the staffing of RNZ?
We haven't been singled out. The 7% decrease in funding happened right across the public sector.
Well, it happened like last year. A lot of public sector organisations were asked to make those savings.
We had
RNZ didn't.
We had a reprieve for a year, but
were you prepared for it then? Did you have a plan ready to go in case you copped it last year?
Look, the budget process is always confidential, and we find out once those decisions are made, very close to budget day. We have a plan to accommodate that, focusing on some of the areas of our costs which are adjustable, are variable, things like our marketing budget and our commissioning budget. We've also completed a voluntary redundancy round, which has brought us some ongoing cost savings. So there's no big bang here. It is just the business of being an organisation, a media organisation, and certainly a publicly funded organisation in 2025.
The funding was pumped up to RNZ after the merger process that didn't happen a couple of years ago. This is under the previous government. Now it's being cut under this one. The things you have to do for the Crown, like a statement of performance expectations, whatever. How can you do that when, the budget might be swollen by 20 million one year and then hacked back by 7% the next, and you don't know what's happening until it happens?
It's just one of the challenges that we have, but I don't feel sorry for us. If you just compare the stability of our funding with the commercial challenges of commercially funded media in New Zealand, this is just something that you do need to be ready for and prepared for. It's a reality of our system and how it operates.
Well, you've been put under pressure by the current broadcasting minister. He says, I want to see more trust, more ratings, more efficiency, but even albeit with this budget cut. Mark Jennings, an astute observer, co-editor of Newsroom, media veteran, he says RNZ's now a bit of an easy target for the minister who's under pressure to achieve things. Do you feel you're being pressured by the government to do things because there's not much about the media sector outside of that they can control?
No, I don't think that's the case. High standards should be set for us, and we should be up for that. RNZ is now a more important part of the New Zealand media sector because big parts of it have been hollowed out. And therefore, I think it's absolutely acceptable that we are expected to deliver high-quality, trusted content, and we're doing a lot of significant work around our editorial standards, around the transparency and how we operate as an organisation, around the training for all our staff to be able to deliver our stringent editorial policy, our appetite for getting people into the organisation to do independent reviews of our quality of our content. We did one last year around our coverage of the Gazan war. We're about to release one around the breadth of the sources and people that we talk to on air. So we are really working hard to make sure that we are as trustworthy as we can be. And I think it's good that those standards are high. And New Zealand needs trusted journalism. It needs us to do a good job.
He specifically really pressed you to increase that, right?
Yes, it did. And the point I make, trusted journalism in current affairs and programming and content that celebrates our culture and nourishes our sense of national identity. Those are our charter requirements. The focus can be at times on the performance of an element of all of the services that we do in terms of audience size. But delivering the charter is much, much more important to us, and trust is fundamental to that. So, we'll do our best to achieve the highest levels of trust that we can.
How are you going to demonstrate that? You've got values surveys that you do. I note that you were going to be releasing one this week along with the latest audience radio ratings. Have you not released that because maybe those findings weren't so great and would have undercut your message about having a bit of a springboard?
No, we've actually put more questions into that survey, which means it will take time to get back. It's a couple of weeks delayed, but we'll release those when we get them. But we do take the pulse of New Zealand in terms of how New Zealanders feel about how we're delivering our charter and measures like trust 3 times a year. And it's robust, independent research done by Varian. And we keep an eye on also other industry measures around trust as well. Trust is not something that sits in isolation. Trust is also about relevance and about usefulness. Maybe people have lost sight of the overall effectiveness of RNZ's strategy, the range of content we're doing and getting to 80% people a month, the fact that we have 1.5 million. RNZ's been able to deliver its charter much more effectively because of that strategy and being useful and relevant and actually being available in people's lives.
Yeah, but you have to produce that in a form you can give to your stakeholders at the Crown and to prove that you...
But we're publicly funded and we need to be accountable. I'll just give you one example of how we're operating. The story that our reporter Lauren Crimp did earlier this year on rupture in the Hikurangi subduction zone. Really good piece of journalism. In the old way of working, you'd hold that story on your own platforms and look to draw audiences. But we shared that widely. It appeared on every major website. It appeared in the Northern Advocate. It appeared in the Otago Daily Times. So when we think about trust and being useful to New Zealanders, our radical sharing of content, where New Zealanders can find us on YouTube and also find us in their local newspaper or find us on another major news website. That's very powerful in terms of delivering more value to New Zealanders. And I'm really clear that I need to be able to express and explain that strategy, which is all about being useful and relevant, delivering our charter, and that's what will give us higher trust levels.
Well, some people who appear not to be taking that on board are the coalition party leaders. They are frequently condemning not just RNZ but media as kind of biased, unfair, woke, even things like that. David Seymour still refuses to come on Morning Report. Likewise, his ACT Party MPs who are ministers, they don't trust RNZ. Are you worried about that, or do you feel targeted?
I don't think they don't trust RNZ. They are often on RNZ on different shows.
Well, Winston
Deputy Prime Minister Seymour has a new slot on First Up, which is really good. We get really good access to all of those politicians. We live in an age where people do have strong views about the role of media and the news media and public media. Our independence is so strong. We have an active parliament with a charter that gives us that ability to make our own decisions around editorial matters. We'll always have critics and we'll always have politicians who are unhappy with us or happy with us. We will just keep doing our job.
Winston Peters called Guy Espiner a liar in Parliament recently. He said he was an ally and a tool of the Labour Party's health spokesperson, accused him of, I think, even Goebbels tactics. That's quite extreme language. RNZ didn't seem to push back on that. Do you think that's damaging, that he can say things about RNZ's journalism like that on the record?
Yeah, Mr. Peters needs to be able to say whatever he wants to be able to say, and it does not affect how we operate, and therefore we're not going to pay too much attention to it. That's kind of where it ends for me.
In the statement of performance expectations, there was an interesting line there that says you're going to launch a new wire service this year. What will that be, and is it actually something that's a bit of a revenue raiser? Is it different to the sharing you already do with other media outlets?
It's not a revenue raiser. Our objective is to get our content to more people. We already actually have a wire service operating. Our content is everywhere. You can see it every day in most of the newspapers in New Zealand, certainly on all of the major news websites. You hear our bulletins on other radio stations. So the wire service idea is to bring a bit more structure to that. Invested in a new content delivery platform for our local democracy reporting service. 16, 17 local council reporters that we support in communities around New Zealand, where if we weren't supporting that along with New Zealand On Air, those local councils wouldn't be being covered to the same level. And we do see the opportunity to use that to get our content shared more effectively and just make it easy for people to access our content. So the wire service exists already, and it will get a bit more structure and hopefully make it more useful to our media partners and also useful to New Zealanders who are interested in our high quality news.
Another state-owned broadcaster, TVNZ, this week launched its first pay operation when it has the FIFA Football World Cup with the All Whites in it. Next year, you'll have to buy a season pass to see everything. So this is a bit of a first. Do you expect more of that in the future? And would RNZ ever consider any kind of modest subscription-based service if TVNZ paves the way on that?
A couple of comments. Firstly, I think commercial media businesses are having to look for direct revenue from audiences as opposed to relying so heavily on advertising, because advertising is so challenged. So good on TVNZ for coming up with this initiative, and I really do wish them well. But for RNZ, we need to stay in front of any paywall. I mean, you could end up with a situation in New Zealand where a lot of high-quality journalism that remains does sit behind a paywall and is not freely available. Therefore, RNZ's role to deliver our charter is to be easy to access, available, and you don't have to pay to get it. So I don't see that as an option for us.
Current government might quite like it, wouldn't they, if you turned RNZ Concert into a modest, small subscription service for those who like it or something like that?
So the whole point of having a public media organisation is that all citizens can access us, not just those who can pay.
No political pressure on you to find any ways of raising money.
It's why doing the best we can for our YouTube audience. It's why doing the best we can for our digital audience. That's so important, and there's no pressure at all or expectation. Also, Colin, the commercial media sector is fragile. And all those businesses are doing a really good job of adapting to those challenges. I don't think they would welcome us trying to get some of their revenue. And I don't think that would be fair because we do have the privilege of being publicly funded. So it's more for us about being more useful and relevant to as many New Zealanders, both those people who have always relied on us and are very demanding of what we do for them, but also younger audiences, new audiences, and maybe connecting with people who didn't know us too much before. And that's why that overall audience picture is so important.
And just finally, to go back to where we started, Shane Curry at the New Zealand Herald, not exactly a disinterested observer. He's an editor at a rival media company, but he said Paul Thompson's got 6 to 12 months to sort this out. Do you feel under pressure for your job, your position or your legacy at RNZ that you have to see results within 6 to 12 months on RNZ National, or you've got a problem personally?
I'm always wanting to do the best job I can. Where there are parts of our service which need attention, I do need to lead a change there, and I enjoy that challenge. It's hard, but I do feel energised by that challenge.
But that target, the 500,000 thing, if you don't hit that, is that going to be a problem? Is the board going to be on your back if you can't hit that?
It's a challenge, and it's it'll take a lot of effort, but really good to see that we're starting to see some growth, modest but still growth in our audience, Colin. So it shows that we can do it, and if we can just continue to fine tune and improve what we're doing on all our platforms, I think New Zealanders will respond.
Even in Auckland?
Everywhere.
That was RNZ Chief Executive and Editor-in-Chief Paul Thompson talking to me this week about RNZ's plan to halt the slide at RNZ National and to try and get more Aucklanders on side and Auckland issues on the air. Well, RNZ's not the only media company that's ringing the changes right now, and this week TVNZ announced its first ever pay-for-play subscription offering. That's for coverage of the FIFA Football World Cup next year, some of which will be aired and streamed for free, including the games the All Whites play. But for the whole tournament, you're going to need a fan pass. Hayden Donnell took a look at that and the latest news about RNZ and the Herald's publisher NZME in this week's Midweek Mediawatch last Wednesday on Nights with Neil Donovan on RNZ National. And that was the last chance to hear the departing Hayden Donnell. Hayden leaves the Mediawatch team this week after 5 fun-filled years.
Gee, the love is coming through for you here, Hayden.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this role. I have some advice for media companies. Stop pivoting to video.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. Stop it, for goodness sake. Keep the preferred Prime Minister poll. Colin Peacock is full of crap on that one. News review, news review. More media commentators should be composing jingles for their own shows.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean,
it hasn't always been popular when I've tried to pioneer that, but it's a Mediawatch news review.
If you missed Midweek Mediawatch, it's in our podcast feed, and if you're missing Hayden, you can catch him in a new role writing for the spin-off from next week. And finally on Mediawatch this week, a while back on Afternoons on RNZ National, the host Jesse Mulligan mixed it up a bit on the music front, playing Paper Planes by MIA, but inadvertently he played the not clean version.
Excuse me, let me introduce my lady. Her name is Perrin and she crazy.
Well, I recognise the chorus, but we got the wrong remix in there. She's sounding all right, but I heard one bad swear and don't need that in the school hour, so my apologies to anyone who tuned in for that.
And as Jesse Mulligan noted there, that wasn't really appropriate for an afternoon or even an after-school audience. And when Jesse then interviewed the former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern back in June, he asked her about something that she'd blurted out, which she really didn't mean for others to hear.
Do you regret calling David Seymour an arrogant prick?
What I said at the time was, as my mother said, if you've got nothing nice to say, and I think that's a good mantra to live by. So I apologise for it, and I did mean it.
Maybe so, but Jesse Mulligan then pressed the former Prime Minister on that.
When your advisor said you left your microphone on, you said something about David Seymour. What did you think you'd said?
I'm not going to say that on air.
It's in the book.
It's a family show. I can't read it out loud.
Meanwhile, on his outlet The Platform, the host Sean Plunkett did read out that part of Jacinda Ardern's book, and he was thinking of the children, though with tongue-in-cheek.
I exhaled, a sigh of relief. Thank goodness, I said. Andrew waited confused. I thought I'd called him a... Children, please. Effing prick.
Now, as an independent and online-only outlet, The Platform doesn't really have to worry about the Broadcasting Standards Authority codes for decency and offensive language, but RNZ does, and one listener did complain about Jesse Mulligan's use of the word prick, citing several of the broadcasting standards. Swearing on a national show is unacceptable, he said, and he also thought it was very similar to a recent TV broadcast where the C word was bleeped out. Now, in its defence, RNZ said that Jesse Mulligan only used the P word in context in reference to a significant news event in late 2022. Indeed, that actually featured in RNZ's news at that time, with the target of the term using it to describe himself.
ACT leader David Seymour has accepted an apology from the Prime Minister, who called him an arrogant prick under her breath in the House.
The irony is I was asking her if there's anything she's apologised for and made right, and then she called me an arrogant prick. But look, some days I'm a useless Maori, other days I'm an arrogant prick.
So unsurprisingly, perhaps, this week the Broadcasting Standards Authority did not uphold the complaint against Jesse Mulligan. It said the word prick was used just once and just fleetingly, and it's now considered low-level bad language and not in the BSA's list of top 30 most offensive words. The BSA also said the interview did not contain that C word or reference the earlier incident cited by the complainant. But that word is at the very top of the BSA's what not to swear list, and Stuff did publish that word recently when the senior correspondent Andrea Vance used it in a forthright Sunday Star Times column in May, criticising the government over pay equity law changes, and that ended up leading the 6pm news a few days later when it was quoted back in Parliament.
No mai haere mai. Welcome to 3 News. To see or not to see? That was the question for Parliament when Workplace Relations Minister Brooke Van Velden chose to use the C word in full today during a fiery debate in the House.
7 people subsequently complained about the Sunday Star Times publishing the C word, even though it was in a censored form, though the Post website later published that column with the word in full. And last month, the Media Council also declined to uphold the complaints about that. The Media Council said readers do not have the right to be offended, and public attitudes to profanity have changed. And while some members of the council did feel that the use of the word was unnecessary and bordered on abuse, defending free expression on an important matter of public interest overrides its misgivings about the wisdom of the way the word was used. And the council also said,
"This has always been considered a matter of editorial discretion. If readers find a publication distasteful, they can choose to get their news elsewhere. That is a risk editors run when they publish material that's likely to upset a significant number of readers."
So if an editor thinks the words are rude but still fit to print in context, it's a case of publish and run the risk of being damned, but by the audience, not by the watchdog. That's it for this weekend. Thanks so much for listening, and if you have any thoughts for us or ideas for us to follow up, do get in touch. Email us mediawatch@rnz.co.nz, or you'll also find us at MediawatchNZ on X. And you can even write us an old-fashioned letter and send it to PO Box 123 Wellington. I'll be back again next Wednesday with Midweek Media Watch. Catch you then. In the meantime, follow Media Watch and listen on any podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode.